In the same way, however, Gabimaru felt that he couldn't afford to waste any more time, so he moved forward. As he advanced through the thick fog leading to Aroi, he encountered the shadows of trees resembling Oko. He then realized that these creatures were singing strange songs and, as expected, he was curious about them. Nevertheless, Gabimaru continued his journey, unaware that Milo was following him. Shortly afterward, he reached the doors and prepared to enter. However, he stopped when he noticed the presence of Tenzin, who had previously killed Tenza. As expected, Gabimaru did not know this, so he only suspected that the mysterious woman was not human and asked her to identify herself. Tenzin was angry at Gabimaru's sudden appearance and told him to leave because she didn't want to deal with another human. Before receiving an answer, Gabimaru realized that Tenzin had the ability to transform someone into the elixir of life, so Gabimaru became immediately cautious. Realizing this, the supernatural being became aggressive and the two began to fight. At that moment, Tenzin was shocked when her arm broke during the battle. Before she could say anything, Gabimaru attacked her and kicked her neck until it broke. However, both wounds healed instantly and the monster tried to attack him, destroying the floor in the process. As expected, Gabimaru observed the regenerative ability and immense power of his opponent that destroyed the floor. Thus, he concluded that it was one of the Tenzin, so Gabimaru used his fire technique to burn Tenzin and turned his attention to the door to continue his journey. However, at that moment, he was attacked by the charred creature, which slammed him into the door's wall. After that, Tenzin now took the form of a man and believed he had accidentally killed Gabimaru, whom he considered a valuable material for more elixir. However, he was shocked to see that Gabimaru was still standing. Then, the albino asked if he was one of the Tenzin he had heard of, and without receiving an answer, Gabimaru continued to fight the creature. Meanwhile, the monster was curious to know how Gabimaru could withstand his attack. However, Gabimaru did not reveal anything and demanded that he disclose the location of the elixir of life. Of course, Tenzin said nothing. As the fight continued, Gabimaru realized that the blows were very powerful. Furthermore, Gabimaru realized that exchanging blows with Tenzin would be dangerous because of his extraordinary strength and immunity to attacks. Because of this, Gabimaru noticed that the kick he delivered had a unique and effective impact in making Tenzin bleed, which made him wonder how that could happen. However, before reaching a conclusion, Tenzin transformed into the form of a woman and then decided to use her power to attack Gabimaru with invisible attacks originating from her hands, causing significant damage to the shinobi. Nevertheless, Gabimaru still tried to withstand the attack. While withstanding the attack, Gabimaru wondered if he could emerge victorious from the battle. Then, he saw an image of his wife in his mind, which gave him the strength to push through his opponent's fire and approach Tenzin. After that, he mentioned that his goal was to return home no matter what he had to sacrifice. After the previous incident, Gabimaru attacked Tensei with a speed that surpassed their regenerative abilities. This way, Gabimaru managed to prevent his enemy from recovering, leaving them sprawled on the ground with severe injuries. Afterward, Gabimaru demanded Tensei to reveal the elixir's location, but Tensei only laughed as flowers began to sprout from his body. Before passing out, the monster said he would be scolded again, and after saying that, many flowers emerged from within him. In the presence of Tensei's transformation into a flower monster, Gabimaru tried to stay silent to analyze and combat the monster before him. However, the transformed Tensei released a beam that exerted great pressure on Gabimaru's body, preventing him from using his fire power and evading the monster's attacks. As his consciousness began to fade, Gabimaru wondered if the events they were experiencing on the island were real or just a nightmare. After that, Gabimaru woke up to find himself in bed with his worried wife after he had a very bad dream. At that moment, a tear fell from Gabimaru's eye, believing that it was all just a dream. His wife offered chrysanthemum tea to help calm him, and then he smiled, realizing that everything was just an illusion. Nonetheless, he was grateful to see his wife, even if only in a dream. Then, he apologized for not being able to return to her in the real world. Back in the present, Gabimaru was being strangled by the transformed Tensei, but at that moment, Gabimaru reflexively attacked, following the instructions of his former leader who trained him to hurt his enemies until their last breath. Albino then activated a power called Higoshi and managed to burn the flower monster's tentacles that were holding him. However, he was severely injured and could not get up from the ground. At that moment, Gabimaru saw Amy by his side, and with her power, the girl helped Gabimaru escape from Sujin by creating a crater that carried them to a valley far from the battlefield. After Tensei's transformation disappeared, he asked Main why he did what he did. Back in the village, Senta apologized to Sahir for letting Gabimaru go and accepted the consequences. He explained that he had tried to find Gabimaru alone but couldn't navigate through the thick fog, which led Oko to explain that it was impossible for two residents to travel outside the area where they were. For her part, Sajiri suggested that their next step was to search for Gabimaru if he was heading to Orai. However, Yuzuhara said that Albino might decide to continue the journey alone. After that, the female ninja pointed out that Inacio Mana should be concerned about the well-being of the criminal assigned to him, which left Saw speechless. On the other hand, the tree monster realized that Main had also left, so he decided to help them go to Lorai because he believed the girl was following Gabimaru. After learning that Oko could navigate through the fog, Yuzuriha changed her mind and told Sajiri that she was willing to accompany her in the search for Albino. While traveling, the woman realized the great challenge they would face after reaching Orai, which was confronting Tensei. The passage describes various events and characters on the island. It is explained that Tensei consists of 7 sages separated from a single senate after mastering mystical arts. The Tree Man also tells about the transformation his people experienced more than 1,000 years ago, where everyone turned into trees. Because of this, they gathered in the Ojo zone, hoping that their souls would enter the Orai. Remember that Orai and Ojo are 2 of the 3 zones on the island. However, in the case of the Tree Man, he mentions his daughter, who he believes was the first to undergo this transformation. Meanwhile, in the Orai zone, we see members of the Tensei group debating which form they prefer, female or male. They argue and discuss calmly. Just as they are about to reach a conclusion, Funkin Hody appears and says they need to talk about the intruders on the island. He states that the current humans are an unusual group compared to those they have interacted with in the past. He mentions reaching this conclusion after finding many bodies of creatures called Xing on the island. After that, Ju Fa reprimands Suhim for being careless and letting the humans he encountered escape, even losing to them. As punishment, Tensei decides to temporarily strip Shin of his youth with an invisible force from his palm. Seconds later, we see Toma and Chobai warning Ju Fa to be careful with his actions because they are a family that must stay united. Finally, Ju Fa complies and decides to calm down, then reports about the humans he sent to Pazat. However, Fui and Yotai, their master, warns not to underestimate humans or individuals fighting against Chuhin, as their abilities might allow them to escape from Pazat. After that, the master concludes that other humans might also be difficult to deal with. He then asks Chuhin if he managed to kill the human he fought, and Chuhin says yes. Despite complications, Toma and Chobai remain confident and state that they can handle any challenges that come their way. They then serve a cup of tan to each group member, toasting to immortality and their master. Shin then regains his youth after drinking the elixir and, as expected, is now angry. Meanwhile, in the Rocky Valley, we see Gabimaru regain consciousness and reflect on the monster he fought earlier, thinking he might have a chance to defeat them and fight alongside his allies. After that, he turns and sees the criminal Tamiya and his executioner Fuchai. Then the big man mentions that Gabimaru is done and asks if it's time for the albino's end. Immediately, the 3 characters prepare to fight, and Gabimaru has to face the warriors. Again, Tamiya questions if Gabimaru will die because of his bloody appearance. After a while, the 2 criminals decide to test their strength if they fight, but Fuchai stops them, saying what they are doing is senseless and unscientific. He then suggests Tamiya gather information about Gabimaru without killing him. On the other hand, Gabimaru realizes that the 2 warriors before him are very strong, so he changes tactics and asks for an alliance. However, Tamiya draws his sword to ensure Gabimaru is not trying to deceive him and expresses his disappointment at what seems to be cowardice. Fuchai then asks Albino why he made the request, and both are surprised to learn about the existence of creatures called Tensei. As expected, Fuchai doubted whether they should trust him, so they decided to meet the creatures mentioned by Gabimaru. After that, the blonde executioner mentioned that Gabimaru was a competitor in the mission but was curious about the strange creatures on the island. He claimed that he didn't care about the pardon for his crimes and only wanted to become immortal, recording history as a legendary warrior. He wanted to defeat those superhuman creatures to achieve this. Although he considered Tamiya Fuchai's idealism as foolish, he was also interested in meeting the immortal creatures because he wanted the chance to dissect them. Now, their goals aligned, Gabimaru, Tamiya, and Fuchai officially formed an alliance. To start, Fuchai suggested that Gabimaru provide more information, and he prepared to talk about Mei. In the midst of this, Gabimaru was surprised to see Mei slightly bigger and hear her mention his name, which excited him. He asked if she knew the secret of the Tensei and if there was a way to defeat them all. Then, Mei told Gabimaru that the power to defeat those creatures was called Tao, but she could only give a brief explanation about it. Even so, she said that Tao was strong, weak, body, and Tandian. At that moment, both Tamiya and Fuchai recognized the word Tandian and explained that it was the area below the navel. However, before she could continue her explanation, the group was attacked. So, Tamiya attacked and thought that the best way to understand Tao was by fighting the monsters in front of him. After that, a big man carried Mei on his shoulders to guide her. As the creatures approached, Gabimaru saw from a distance a monster different from Shujin and wondered what that creature was. In a change of scene, we see Sajiri's group. As they walked, Center reached a conclusion based on the information provided by Oko. He commented that perhaps the island should not be mistaken for a true paradise on Earth, because based on what they had seen so far, the place was just a random mix of religions and cultures created by humans. He also theorized that the island's rulers wanted only humans who turned into flowers to return to the continent, which could be a clue to finding the elixir and escaping the island. After that, Senta stopped when he realized he had spoken too far, but Sajiri and the others praised him for his knowledge. After listening to Senta's theory, the ninja woman wondered if they could face the Tenzin enemies since they had been there for over 1,000 years and worried that Gabimaru and Mei were already dead. However, Sajiri said that the albino was still alive because his sole purpose was to return and meet his wife, and he would not die before achieving that. Soon after, Oko explained to the others about the power called Tao, which is an energy present in all things in the world. He explained that the Tenzin had control over this power. Oko said that mastering Tao could grant powers similar to those of a god, and it could only be extracted through the yin-yang cycle. This could allow someone to have superhuman strength or survive normally fatal injuries. In a change of scene, we see Narugai trying to suddenly attack Shin with his sword, but Shin easily intercepted him, which was surprising because he was blind. After that, the samurai told him that he would not train him to use his sword yet, despite his desire for revenge on Tenza. Then Narugai begged Shin to teach him how to fight because he did not want to see the people important to him die. Upon hearing that, the warrior told him about his ability to sense waves around him, which allowed him to distinguish objects clearly even though he was blind. He also explained that his spirit had to be balanced to sense those waves, having both anger and calmness simultaneously. Even though Narugai knew that this ability couldn't be acquired directly, he still insisted that Shin teach him how to use a sword. Thus, the warrior pointed out the mistakes he noticed in Narugai's technique and demonstrated the correct way to use a sword. As Shin continued explaining, he cut Shajin, who approached, into several pieces. Then he told Narugai that he wouldn't be his teacher but that he could observe him while fighting and learn on his own. This led Narugai to join the fight, and at the same time, we could see Shin telling himself that he needed to perfect his ability if he hoped to stand a chance against Tenzin. In a scene change, we could see all the Tenzin engaging in intimacy with each other, and afterward, Rafnatansi asked Muden if it was possible for the human he defeated earlier to escape from the pit. Muden replied that it was possible because they were too weak to try getting out of the pit's depths, and also explained that the human assimilation ability would only hinder their escape. Nevertheless, the criminal Chobai managed to escape from the pit while carrying Toma on his back. Once safe, Chobai told Toma about his plan to take revenge on Tenzin, and Toma reluctantly agreed to accompany him despite the task practically endangering his own life. However, Chobai believed that Tenzin's weakness was in the lower part of their body because that was where he saw them regenerate when he cut his opponent's body at that time. Hearing this, Toma was impressed with how Chobai could deduce this detail, adding that his brother might be a genius in defying death. At that moment, they were both attacked by a monster named Dachai, sent by Tenzin to investigate the humans on the island. Then Dachai asked them to return to the pit and become Tin. As expected, they refused and decided to bring Toma and Chobai before the head of Tenzin. Hearing this, they were forced to defend themselves and called forth a creature named Yashin. While Toma fought against Shajin, Chobai fought against Dachai. During the fight, the strange creature underestimated the blonde criminal because he believed he couldn't control Tao. After a brief clash, he saw an opportunity to fatally wound the bird by striking its neck, which he eventually achieved. As usual, this caused Toma to panic, seeing his brother lying on the ground and bleeding. However, the blonde got up from the ground and continued fighting. That was when the creature became frightened because his opponent was recovering quickly despite being human. Upon closer look, he realized that his power was increasing exponentially. This way, the second round began, and during the fight, Shove concluded several things about Tao until he realized that it could defeat Tenzin. Despite hearing this, he felt fearful because Tenzin's power could be affected. So, he decided to eliminate Shove. During the fight, the boy remembered his past, where he had to slice his own face to become a criminal because his appearance didn't fit the underworld. In this way, he could protect his brother's integrity. Afterward, the blonde boy attacked the monster and injured it in the stomach, adding that it might be the creature's weak point. Realizing he was in danger, the creature became serious and ordered his allies to attack the human warriors. However, when he turned around, he saw that Toma had defeated the rest of his subordinates, which clearly surprised him. Unfortunately for him, Yo had learned how to use Tao and could also see that mystical energy. With that knowledge, Yo eliminated the opponent in front of him, ending the fight. At the same time, elsewhere, we see a large ninja fighting while asking Mei if he was using Tao correctly. Mei commented that he needed to combine strength and weakness to achieve perfect balance, but in that place, he was only combining strength with strength. The battle continued until our hero eliminated several of Shujin's monsters. However, the captain of the monster group recognized Mei and said he hadn't seen her for centuries since she disappeared in Tenzin's palace. Having found her, they planned to take her back to that place. Hearing this, Gabimaru thought the pink-haired girl was the same as the creature. However, realizing that she didn't want to go with them, Gabimaru decided to fight to protect her. At that moment, Tenzin's servant split himself in two and prepared to fight the protagonist. At the same time, the great criminal and Gabimaru's ally also wanted to join the fight. But before that, the creatures said they were the two training to master Tao, adding that there were 5 ways to train to master this difficulty. The first 4 ways could be done alone, while the last one required a training partner. After that explanation, they mentioned that they needed intimacy with someone of the opposite sex to complete their training and master the mystical power. They then mentioned that Mei was a Tenshin, but because she was born with incomplete power, she was expelled by the leader and given 2 choices: die or start over on the path of Tao and become the training partner of the 2 of them. In this way, she was marked and had to flee to avoid that fate. Hearing this, everyone understood what it meant and prepared to fight. At the same time, Gabimaru remembered his wife, who was also marked. The 2 Yoshi then merged and transformed into a monster, saying that the moment of truth had arrived. During the fight, Mei explained that Gabimaru had to combine strength and weakness to merge with Tao. In the end, Gabimaru managed to do so, and when seeing Albino's aura, the pink-haired girl commented that he had a lot of energy. After that, he used his fire power and severely injured the monster. At that moment, the creatures realized that this person could master Tao. Before receiving the fatal blow, they recognized that Gabimaru was similar to Tenzin's leader. Gabimaru eliminates these monsters and says that they are now ready to face the immortals. After the battle, Yoshi reveals that the leader of Tenzin ordered them to monitor the intruders on the island to determine if they posed a threat, adding that in the end, they were right. After saying this, both Gabimaru and the major villain eliminate them. Then, Gabimaru mentions that he discovered a trick with Tao but assumes that with a little practice, he will be able to master it. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see Sahira and her group arrive at the Tenzin temple, where they encounter an immortal monster with a cunning face who beheads Joko. Seeing this, everyone is shocked, and when the ninja woman realizes the danger, she tries to escape but is soon captured by the enemy. She stands by, trying to analyze the situation, and at that moment, Joko explains that this creature is named Mutin and that he is one of the Tenzin at the temple. When the fat man hears this, he is surprised, while the monster smiles because it has been 1,000 years since the last human came to that place. Next, Tenzin provokes Opko to transform into a tree, making him happy because his religion and purpose in life are fulfilled. However, Mutin destroys this illusion, mentioning that everything about humans turning into trees and the religion is a lie created by them. In reality, the Hoko village is nothing more than a human laboratory to uncover the mysteries of biological life, which naturally disappoints the tree man. At that moment, humans modified by Hoko appear as his warriors. They subdue the ninja woman and threaten the others. While Tenzin stands over one of them, he answers a crucial question for our hero, and in this way, Mutin reveals that the elixir of life does not exist, adding that Tan is something only they need. If a human drinks it, they will turn into a tree like Hoko, rendering the quest meaningless. Then, Yasuhara rises from the ground and brutally attacks Mutin, grabbing Sahiri's hand and escaping. At that moment, the samurai woman doesn't understand what is happening until her companion shares his life philosophy, which is to survive by any means to help his comrades. Of course, this wouldn't be possible if he were dead. However, Tenzin quickly recovers, captures his prey, and praises the ninja woman. He offers to teach her how to use Tao, adding that if she succeeds, she will have great power under her control, but if she fails, she will become raw material to make more Tan. At this moment, the fat man appears in their path, ready to fight everyone, including Sahiri and the others. Thus begins a fierce battle in which the fat man manages to cut the enemy while the ninja woman uses her strength and skills to do the same. However, Tenzin mentions that these techniques are examples of how Tao can be used but notes that they are too weak to cause damage. The difference between humans and gods is vast, and thus the duel continues, with him demonstrating his superior power. However, he tells Sahiri that Tenzin's weak point is in the abdomen because Tao emanates from there. The samurai woman manages to strike him in that area, but he mocks her because they do not care for their bodies. However, at that moment, the woman severely injures him with an upward slash, and the sudden blow forces him to retreat. As he observed his opponent, he realized that the woman could use a significant amount of mystical power at any given moment, something considered very dangerous. After that, everyone noticed that Sahiri had injured Tenzin to the point where he couldn't move, and the female samurai stated that if the energy protecting him was Tao, she knew how to hurt him because Gabimaru emitted the same aura. This made the monster think that the energy Sahir could use was poison, something he found both intriguing and dangerous because he feared for his life but also wanted to see what kind of Tan he could create with it if he defeated her. The fight continued, and he decided to eliminate Sajiri, considering her the most lethal. However, the team managed to survive the enemy's initial attack. After that, the enemy transformed into a woman and attacked from above with spit bombs, which our hero successfully avoided. Seeing the fierce battle, Sajiri was momentarily speechless, but the female ninja quickly brought her back to reality, saying that it wasn't a god and could be defeated. After that, Yusuri accelerated Tenzin's technique, discovering that it was very similar to hers and thus claiming she could match it. Yusuri then used one of her techniques, capturing the enemy and bringing it down. This signaled her partner to do his part, and realizing the deadly danger, the enemy tried to defend himself, but Senda appeared behind him and restrained him with determination. Thus, Sajiri had the opportunity to wound the monster in its abdomen and succeeded, causing the enemy to fall. After the fight, the characters took a short break, during which Sahira asked Senta why he helped, with Izuhara questioning if he felt something for her. He replied that he only admired her for her freedom and life. He added that he wanted to be an artist, but because of his family's rules, he had to train under the teachings of the Seaman clan like his ancestors. In a change of scene, we see Gabimaru's group defeating all the creatures, and the albino approached me to try to learn more about Tao and everything that was coming. However, his body seemed to lack the same energy. He collapsed, and as a result, Gabimaru started bleeding and fell to the ground, shocking his companions. Almost simultaneously, near Tenzin's temple, we see that Sajiri and Tenza were distracted because Subiera called them and said that Mudanza's body had turned into flowers. Before he could react, the enemy attacked him, but fortunately, Senta deflected it and took the wound for him. Consequently, his body became infected, and flowers began to grow from him. With no time to think of anything else, Sahira realized that Tenzin had turned into a monster, and they had to fight him once again, who now seemed more dangerous. However, at that moment, they moved in to confront him, starting a fierce duel, and thus the anime ended.